What's up, traders? It's Robert Falco here from Real Life Trading. Dan Janson and me are bringing you another edition of the Real Life Earnings Report. Let's get into it. Yeah, earnings season winding down a bit, but so there's not as many as frequent, but Zoom was so strong that we didn't want to wait for another report, which we think we'll have another report tomorrow afternoon that we'll record on. So this will be just a one hitter on Zoom video. And as you said, it was an absolute monster. Huge gap up. This thing gapped up $132, 41% almost on the day. So let's get into their earnings results.
Awesome.
So here is their PowerPoint, and again, it looks much better than Dick's Sporting Goods.
That it does. Well put together. Very clear if you're going through reading it. Made it very understandable to not the average investor that has to know everything. Like somebody that just knows Zoom could actually sit back and look, and it's pretty clearly broken down. So we'll run through it just the same. But yeah, look at their revenue growth for the year. I mean, 355%. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, most companies, we like to talk about growth companies with over like 20 or 30% revenue growth, like quarter over quarter, year over year. And this one, 355% is just astronomical. We knew they were going to be good, and Zoom actually came out, I think it was the beginning of June, and said, hey, we're raising our guidance for quarter two. This is their quarter two of their fiscal year 21, even though we're in 2020. So it's a little different. But they came out and said, hey, we're raising our guidance. Well, they doubled that guidance that they even put out themselves. So that's how strong their quarter was. Just absolute crusher of a quarter for Zoom.
Yep. And it completely makes sense too. I mean, obviously a lot of the entire year has to be revolved around coronavirus. So Zoom has been the household name for ways for people to communicate and continue working at home. Zoom has been pretty much at the forefront of all of that. So a lot of company contracts, a lot of schools are using Zoom. So everybody needs them. It's a product that they have that people need right now.
Yeah, I think kids learn how to use Zoom before they even know how to read or write now, don't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, kids with technology, they know the latest everything before anybody else. So before they read a book, they're on the iPad. So yeah, they're they're well advanced in technology. But yeah, Zoom is. I mean, even I have family members, like little kids in preschool, that are on Zoom because that's how they have to go to school. So whether they sit in front of the camera long enough, that's different, but Zoom doesn't care. Zoom's got the contract. So, and it shows right here in these numbers as well. So yeah, strong growth. Makes complete sense as to why. Obviously, I was blown away. The stock market, just based on the reaction today, was absolutely blown away by the just massive growth that this one company has. And the other thing is, when a company grows as quick as they do, as like this company did, not many companies do that, but just to have crazy growth, there's always some kind of hiccups as far as either new technology or expanding out too quick or stuff like that. As far as my understanding, Zoom's been pretty flawless. Not too many issues that would really turn people off from using Zoom.
Yeah, I think there was that one bug that they had back in like quarter one where people were getting Zoom conference IDs and it wasn't set like default to like a waiting room or with a password, and so people were jumping into other people's Zoom conferences and showing things that were not safe for work or not safe for school, that kind of thing. But they've resolved that. They actually even had noted in here that they were approved for FedRAMP and is generally available in more than 40 countries and territories. This is like federal government type qualifications. So they are able to be used for governments. I know that there are some that are still like stuck on WebEx and, things like that. But I think they will be going back to Zoom as just that product in particular is not very user friendly, and Zoom is pretty easy to pick up and use. But again, I mean, if you just look at this revenue growth, again, this is in millions. I mean, quarter two last year, 146 million to 664 million is just absolutely insane. These are growth in customers generating over $100,000 in trailing 12-month revenue. So, this isn't like, I'm selling used Beanie Babies on Etsy or something like that, and I'm like Zoom conferencing with someone. This is like actual companies that have revenue over 100K, and so
Yeah.
these are bigger companies that they're just massive growth.
Yeah, and I mean, but they do have multiple products, so huge enterprises are locked in with thousands of employees that all are using Zoom, and then the people that are selling Beanie Babies are using Zoom too. So, and don't knock Beanie Babies; I'm still holding some. They're gonna go up in value. I think.
You're still bag holding some Beanie Babies?
I still got a few. Somebody told me they're gonna be worth. I'm gonna buy a house with them one day. I think so.
One day, we never know. Yeah, and customers with 10 employees or more, this is kind of looked at as a sticky number, because the more people that you train, team members or employees on a particular platform, the harder it is to switch them to something else. And so when you have more employees engaged on it, the more likely they're just going to stick around. 400, and I mean, this is just astronomical. 458% year over year. That is just, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it other than just plain amazing.
Yeah, and even the companies with fewer, the Beanie Baby salesmen, we'll call them, companies with fewer than 10 employees. I mean, even their revenue from those customers increased by 6%. So they went from 30% in Q1 to 36% in Q2. So even on the smaller basis, I mean, they're still making, they're still increasing revenue, which is always a strong sign. And then their main bread and butter is the companies with 10 and over employees. I mean, 458%. I mean, that's some serious dollars right there.
Yeah, and it's not just in the US. Obviously, the Americas are a big piece of the growth, but you can see European, Middle Eastern, and then Asia Pacific also strong year over year growth in revenue. And margins are also increasing. So 28%. GAAP results, so general accounting practices, non-GAAP for 41.7%. So nice increase in margins as well. Sales and marketing is something that you would think that they would have to spend a ton more. I haven't particularly seen it, but it looks like it's good to me. So I think word of mouth a lot of the time. I mean, Zoom is almost a verb now, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it is. And when you have, let's say you have a company of 100 people, you have, let's say there's a company laying off people. Those people are still going out and they have to rebrand themselves. They have to interview for other jobs. They're still using Zoom regardless. And now that they're familiar with it, it's just easy for people to pick up. And I don't really know of too many. I mean, there's some other products out there, but I don't really know of any massive competition right now for Zoom.
Yeah, outside of, maybe like a Microsoft with Skype, but Skype has a ton of problems in and of itself, and Microsoft more focused on like packaging a lot of their services together, especially on the enterprise side. And I personally think that they're going more after Slack or after work/Slack with Teams. But I do think that they see it now, obviously the growth in Zoom, that they could bring a little more competition to them. So, but they've kind of dropped the ball ever since they bought Skype. So if Zoom is able to use, like, look at this free cash flow, it's just absolutely amazing. So they're actually making money. It's not like some of these other companies that they're losing money. Zoom has free cash flow that they can reinvest back into creating a bit more of a moat and a bit better of a user experience, to where people just don't want to leave or don't want to try a new type of service. So you never know. I mean, maybe they're a takeout candidate even for something like a Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft has come to the table with a ton of money at this point, but Microsoft has it, so who knows? But yeah, no, I think it's you're gonna get the brand loyalty at this point. I think Skype was definitely, I believe, first to the table, and I think after Microsoft bought Skype, it didn't go anywhere. But this is Zoom is like the new kid on the block. It was like MySpace to Facebook. Like MySpace was the big one, and then Facebook came along and just ate their lunch. And I think Zoom is doing it a lot better than Skype. It's just more user friendly, just easier to hop on. And then again, once you, besides moving a one button from the left to the right, I mean, how much more can you do with it? It's got pretty much everything that you'd want to host a meeting, to conduct meetings. Even like a lot of the local governments have their. I think we had the Fed reports been on Zoom before, so it's definitely a trustworthy name, and it's got a lot of clientele behind it, and now free cash flow behind it too, which is only going to put them in a better spot.
Yeah, and like you talked about, as far as like if they were to be a takeout candidate, I mean the market cap over 120 billion is pretty big now. As far as, would we buy it? I think that we have to kind of still look at that with some skepticism, with the price to sales at 153 and the PE at over 2,500. But, earnings and valuation, I mean, since when does that matter? I mean, look at this candle. It's just absolutely massive. Even if you go over to TrendSpider and use a little bit of the raindrop candle. So this is, where volume comes in. There was a lot of volume coming in the second half of the day. So a lot of buying. It wasn't like this opened way up here and then sold off all day. There were still people buying this thing. So what do you think for a setup on Zoom? Would you buy it? Where would you buy it? How would you play this?
I mean, I am definitely not a fan of buying at the highs, especially after, I mean, the company gaps the way it did. For me, I'm out. I just can't. I just can't get even an investment. I don't want to put a long-term investment behind it. I think that being said, I think it's a strong company. I would definitely look to buy dips. What do you think about this gap? Does this gap get filled?
I think that the gap fills eventually. I don't think it fills as fast as one might think that it fills. So I had a very small position that I bought last week, just as like a, hey, what the heck? Let's see what it does. It was literally like 5 shares, so it was a little over $1,000, and I'm like, the worst it can do is go to zero, and it probably wasn't going to do that. But I sold pretty much at open today, up a nice healthy amount, and I'll day trade it. Maybe I'll look for a swing trade. Like I would like to see 3 days of consolidation, and then maybe look to take it higher. But if we do start breaking this candle down pretty quickly, then I think that the gap fills. However, I think it kind of does what CRM does and consolidates and looks to break a little bit higher until there's some overall pullback in the market, which just has not happened yet. So I think it fills. I just don't think it fills as fast as everybody would think. Like I wouldn't come in and start shorting it tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's a company with the earnings that we just looked at. It's hard to say I want to go short on this company, but at the same time, it's moved so much where I'd be terrified at this point without some kind of rest period, like you said on CRM. I mean, it gave you a perfect, almost pennant pattern type setup, and then the breakout. If there's something like that on a day trade, swing trade, potentially I'd look at that. Long-term investment, I think I would have to just sit back and just wait a little bit, see what happens, see if there is some kind of competitor, Microsoft putting out some kind of news, whether it's a equally as good product, inferior, better, whatever it is. I mean, anytime there's news of a competitor coming in, I mean, Zoom might lose a little bit on that, and probably look to continue buying dips.
And it doesn't have a lot of short float either, so there's not a lot of shorts to be squeezed, but I feel like anyone that was trying to short this, I mean, just got punished through all of this stuff ever since the coronavirus. So I do think that this gap fills. I just don't think it's going to happen super quick. So I'm not going to look to short it. I'm not going to look to establish long-term positions, but I'll swing trade it or day trade it if something happens to come along that I like. Other than that, I think it's probably a hold, or if you're already in, stay in. I don't think there's any reason why you need to, get out of it completely, unless it was a short-term swing trade. But I would definitely trim a little bit of profits and, see if if you can take it higher, trail your stops up, maybe get into a collar, if you have enough shares. I think this thing, it's almost guaranteed that it goes to 500 at some point in the next few weeks.
What's your point of view on the inevitable coronavirus cure news that will come out eventually at some point? Does that bode well for Zoom, or would that be more of a negative for Zoom?
I don't want to go. I could probably talk for another like 15 minutes on this, but I think work at home is here to stay. So I do not. I do think that a lot of those customers stay. I think that there are a lot of people moving out of metropolitan cities for a number of reasons because they can work from home. They can telecommute. People that may not have been comfortable telecommuting, they were forced to, and now they see that it's pretty easy. Companies realize that workers can actually be productive. So, based on what I've seen in like commercial real estate and people moving out of cities, I think work from home is here to stay. And so I think that Zoom, it probably has a pullback longer term to fill this gap, but I think that Zoom is here to stay. It'll just be about competition in this space. Where right now I think Zoom is kind of the only game in town because Skype's really not that good and WebEx is kind of old school. I don't think that that's very user friendly. So we'll see if Microsoft really pushes hard around this outside of I think they're trying to kill Slack at the moment, but we will see what happens.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the only two potentials to really start knocking it down, I think maybe a little sell off, people thinking, well, no one's going to use Zoom anymore, but like you said, at some aspect, whether it's people are just full-time working at home or they do partial at home, partial at work, the companies are still going to, if they adjust their packages a little bit, maybe, but as the economy gets better, more people are going to need Zoom too. So I think Zoom is strong on that point. The only thing is either competition coming in or Zoom steps on their own toes, which some kind of data breach or negative news that happens, or something in that realm, which you can't really predict. But again, the company's growing like wildfire right now, so probably a bad time to say wildfires, but it's been growing like crazy. So I think there's not too much in the way of Zoom at the moment.
Yep, I agree. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for another earnings report. Once again, this is Robert Falco from Real Life Trading, as well as
Dan Janson. You guys have been great. We appreciate you guys all tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, and check us out at reallifetrading.com to learn how to trade for free.